Thank you so much for joining our retail panel today. I am thrilled to welcome my exciting panel, which is specific to the part of the industry that I work in with Ilmoda Brands and the Common Thread Shops on 3rd and some of the other brand development space that I work in. I am thrilled to not only be a part of this panel, to moderate this panel, but to really have this really impactful conversation with my panelists today. I am thrilled to welcome to you today Councilman Nick Bankston first to the stage. He is, we'll bring him, well, I'm just gonna bring them out first. Yeah, woo, woo, woo! I'm gonna bring them each out first, and then I'll give them each a little brief time to introduce themselves and their roles in the community. I'm gonna bring out Angie Black to the stage, the Director of Administration over at Downtown Columbus, and my dear friend Kimberly Miner, the founder and executive director of WACRA, the Women of Color Retail Alliance. Hello, hello. I'm going to give each of them a couple of minutes to introduce themselves and tell you all a little bit about their role specifically within retail and around Columbus, and of course, small business. And then we will kick off with some of our questions. And then once we are done with that conversation, we'll open it up to the audience to ask you all some fire questions and get you all thinking about what they want to know. So, look, Angie gave me a look like, don't do that to me. Okay, so Councilman Nick Bankston, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, first off, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here on a rainy Friday. I'm actually not sure what season we're in now, but I appreciate you all being out here and supporting the council and all the work that they do. Nick Bankston serves you on Columbus City Council. I serve actually as our finance and governance chair for the city, as well as our economic development chair. So we talk about what is my role in this retail space, fashion space that you call it, is really about creating an atmosphere, an ecosystem, an environment that is friendly to business, all right? And that is to particularly our small businesses, our retailers and our fashion designers and fashion folks that are in this industry are small businesses at the end of the day. And so for us, it's really about how are we looking at policies, looking at procedures, looking at our investments to create an environment for small business to thrive, and particularly our retail industry. As you all know, we all know the stat, we're the 4th largest fashion hub in the country, and that will continue to be not only because of the large retailers that are here, but because we make those investments in our small businesses and create that ecosystem for them to have the supports, the tools that are necessary to move their business forward. So really excited about the conversation today and really excited to continue this work.
Thank you, Councilman.
Hi, my name is Angie Black, and I work for the Downtown Columbus, Inc. And my job position there is the Director of Administration. And with that being said, I'm also the Director of the Common Thread, which is also a small business retail strip within Downtown Columbus, Ohio, for fashion district. So with that being said, I've been with Downtown Columbus Inc. for since 2007. Our company has done wonderful things working with the City of Columbus and other government entities to bring the small businesses back downtown Columbus. We established a strategic plan back in 2011, I believe it was, or 10 or something like that. But one of the things we had asked the constituents is, what would you like to see in downtown Columbus? And one of the things they did say was they wanted to bring back the first floor retail back to Columbus, Ohio. And that's what we're trying to do. And with our business, which is part of the City Center Mall, if nobody knows about that, is a big mall in the middle of the downtown. We have a strip of stores where we're actually doing that, and we're actually bringing the small businesses back. And with the help of Nick Bankston and his team, they're helping us bring this back. So that's what I do.
So, hello? Yeah. Oh, yes, there you go. So, my connection to Columbus started in 1993. And that's when I came here from Macy's executive training program to work for Express. And I was there for 8 years, had 8 promotions, started in finance, and left as the senior merchant, growing a business from 65 to $350 million. I was then in New York for many, many years, and then came back because I knew what was possible in the industry that I had chosen to make my livelihood here in Columbus. And I came back to work again for L Brands at Bath and Body Works. After being there as the chief merchant for home and developing their merchant operations department as well as their strategy organization, I left because I wanted to use that to do something else. And so I founded with 3 of my colleagues, we founded the Women of Color Retail Alliance, because the one thing that we had in common were our stories of how on paper it looked like we had succeeded, but in reality it had taken a lot from us for that to happen. And we wanted to make sure that that wasn't the path for those who were coming behind us. And so I took the role of CEO of Women of Color Retail Alliance in September of '23. And I'm really proud that it's based here in Columbus because of Columbus's contribution to the retail industry, which is 55 million jobs strong in the United States. And we are a huge part of that. As Nick said, we're 4th in that business. And retail being fashion, but also being other areas of commerce, which I think is really important because we have so many opportunities to make that number 3 or 2 because it is fashion and other. So I'm really excited to be here, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here and be a part of this conversation.
Thank you all so much for these wonderful introductions. As you can see, we have a powerhouse panel today. We have public entities, private entities, and when I built my business here in Columbus 15 years ago, almost 15 years ago, and moved my business, I realized Columbus is built on these public-private partnerships, and there really isn't any other city that's doing the same. In Kimberly, because you've traveled throughout the country building other businesses and being a part of that, you could probably attest to the same. And I'd love to start with you with my first question, and we will build off of that conversation. From a retail standpoint, how can physical retail spaces, because with the Columbus Fashion Council, we work with so many up-and-coming and emerging designers who a lot of times want to test their concepts and do a they want to teeter into, sort of tiptoe into retail before they open a brick and mortar on their own with, as you know, with ground floor growth and common thread. From a retail standpoint, how can physical retail spaces, pop-ups, and experiential concepts be used as resources to incubate new fashion brands? From your standpoint, with your 30 years of experience in this space. You started when you were 5. They don't know that.
Right, that's right. So that's a loaded question, but it's a great question. Yeah. And I definitely believe in test and tinker, right? I meet so many young designers, or not even young, but people who have been in the industry and they've gotten tired of it, or they know they're not moving where they want to move to, right? They're not getting the opportunities that other people are getting, and so they step off and they want to go into entrepreneurship. And oftentimes they do it based on what they know, not really identifying or appreciating what they don't know, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And in order to really be successful, you have to test. And it's all about collaboration, right? And so the fact that you're talking about private and public coming together, that's where, in that intersection is where there's success. And so what I would recommend is, get to know the, common threads, right? Who are the stores down there that are similar, or where you could see your brand sitting? So you start there and you say, okay, I just want a little corner, and let me try this concept, right? And then give it a time frame. Okay, I'm going to test this for 4 weeks and understand what is success for you. What is your sell-through? What is your plan? How much do you want to sell? How many units do you want to sell? And at what price? And understand what that price means, because you're going to have to live with that margin, right? And so test in that way. I also think that there's opportunity to test. You've got TikTok, you have social media selling. There are so many ways to have a really small investment that could lead to a very big idea. So collaborate and then use other resources, but absolutely you must test before you step out there.
And is there a perfect formula for that test?
Well, it really depends, honestly. Yeah, I mean, I can advise anybody a little more deeply, but it depends. It's not, there's not a blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we always talk about with some of our Fashion Council members, is there really isn't a perfect formula for every type of brand. It depends on what you're selling, how you're selling, what type of business you're catering to, who your audience is. Are you selling directly to a consumer or to a business? Are you wholesale? Are you a consumer sales brand? So thank you for that answer. I think it's a really direct answer. I think it's very clear to our audience, especially those that are watching this later. Thank you for sharing that, and I'd love to, oh yes, go ahead.
I just want to
Yes.
add to that, because you're talking about those incubation moments as building a brand, right? As you all know, a brand is an identity, and that takes time to build. I think so many folks think that brands are tied to physical locations. They're not. So in that incubation space, and when you're talking about pop-ups, that is an opportunity for you to build that brand, so then folks will follow that brand, not the destination or location. So it's so critical to incubate, to test, to tinker before you step into brick and mortar. And I can encourage so many folks that to do that step first before going into brick and mortar, even though you may think that you have a great idea, but there's so much more expense. There's so many other things, other variables that go into a brick and mortar. So if you could test that concept, make sure you get that following, right? Because I think that the incubation space then leads to e-commerce, which would then allow you to see who's buying your product and where, because also the physical location matters just as much. I mean, where you put it matters too. So you want to be where your customers are, not just where somewhere is that it's affordable. So I'm sure we'll get into that as well. But that incubation period is critical.
I mean, can I just, so I just landed, right? I was in New York this week at a conference and speaking, and one of the people who was on the stage was Stormy Steele from Love and Marriage Huntsville. And she has Canvas Beauty, and she was extremely impressive. And what she talked about was that she had this idea for skincare. And she did this product glaze, right? And she tested it on TikTok. And she just tried a concept. She didn't really talk about the product. She was like, hey, you know, you're going to the club, you want to shine, you know, whatever. And she was there because she is the #1 independent skincare brand on TikTok and did $22 million last year, and it started as a test. It started as a test. And now she has 56 different scents, and she's doing all these other things. But she actually talked about how she thought, I have to have a brick and mortar store. She still doesn't have a brick and mortar store, and she doesn't feel like she really needs it because she was able to connect with her audience in a different way. And I think that's the other thing about retail. You need to really be relevant, and you need to be innovative, and you need to really have your finger on the pulse of what's happening, and don't think because that's how someone else did it, that's the way you should do it.
And I find that quite true. I'm going to chime in on this too, okay? So I find this quite true because with Common Thread, what we have is an incubator program. So we do have fashion designers, and we have other folks that want to start their small business, and we give them the opportunity to test themselves, as you would say, to see if this is what you really want to do. First, you need to make sure you have the education behind you. You're going to have the budget behind you. You're just going to have to know, do you have that person or entity behind you to push you? So TikTok and social media is the way to go if you don't feel that you can do the brick and mortar. So our incubator starts off with the low rent, and we give you the opportunity to make sure your hobby that you think that you have and you think you want to do, that's where we're at. So,
Now, I'm rebuilding downtown, so I still want y'all to be in the brick and mortar. All right, so
He's
But
invested
go.
a
go make
lot
your
of time.
go make your money online, but I need you to still be in the brick and mortar at some
that's
point.
right, and that's
That's
right, that's true.
Yeah, but absolutely be there. But the other thing, and I'm sorry.
No, you're
Please, we
fine,
love
you're
this. This is
fine.
exactly what this is
Hijack
about.
This panel. This is.
I know. I'm sorry. I don't
We're
want to
having
hijack.
a conversation.
But every time
we're
you
doing
say
it.
something,
We're,
it's
we're,
just
we're in my living room right
reminder.
now. Where's my tea? Where's my coffee? Anybody?
To that point, right? And testing and tinkering, and do you have the resources? That resources mean a lot of things, right? And so resources means, your inventory. Resources means you have somebody to cover the store the hours you say the store is going to be open, because the last thing you want to build a brand, the first thing to kill that brand is to have, I'm open from whatever 10 to 5. And someone gets there at 10:05 and the door is closed. And then they come back at 11 and the store is still not open. Just because you have a brick and mortar location doesn't mean you can do whatever you want to do. Right? That's not what building a brand is. That's not what being a retailer is. And it is hard work. It is hard work. And you have to be ready for that investment of time and investment of money, and making sure that your inventory levels are correct, and that investment is there as well.
Well, and let's define retail a little bit for our audience. So bringing us back to building your brand, and Councilman Bankston, when you brought up, building a brand itself, we all work in different parts of in this industry, but we have a lot of crossover. Building a brand itself could mean a lot of different things, but taking your product to retail, you can take it directly to the consumer by way of a brick and mortar store, by way of wholesalers through department stores, by way of specialty boutiques, by way of social media, TikTok shop, YouTube shop, Instagram shop, all of that. You could never actually bring your product into a store and still sell it, right? You could have retailers want to sell your product in their shop, right? There's so many ways you could actually take your product to retail without opening a shop yourself. But let's talk about what we're doing in retail in Columbus when it comes to the brick and mortar piece. And then I want to rewind a little bit on how we define retail within the Columbus Fashion Council and how we've kind of gotten to this point with our brands and how they've been ready for retail. Because 15 years ago, the retail conversation for fashion brands in Columbus, that conversation was not being had. So Councilman Bankston, a friend of mine who I admire so much, and I think you've done so much with the small business and minority business community in Columbus, not just with the committee that you chair in council, but with the ground floor growth program that you've built the last couple of years. I'd love to ask you a question. What role does public funding, infrastructure, and business-friendly legislation play in nurturing new fashion businesses? And I know ground floor growth doesn't just work with fashion, it's first floor retail, across all industries, but specifically around fashion, if you'd like to speak to some of that with us.
I think that when you talk about Columbus and this private-public partnership, or when we talk about emerging things, it is, in my belief, sometimes government's role to be that catalyst, right, to be able to take that risk. Because in many cases, right, financial institutions and corporations are not going to be willing to take that risk because they don't see how it impacts their bottom line. Well, as for us, as government, I can see what the bottom line is, right? We understand the impacts, the economic impacts that fashion brands and developing those and what that turns into. So it's not just simply about the garment or the great idea that you have. Again, it goes back to what I said in my opening statement. You are a small business owner. And then so simultaneously while you are working in your passion and while you are putting that passion into clothing, you also have to be honing your skills as a business owner, because that's the side that I'm investing in. I'm also investing in your dream, but let's be clear, at the end of the day, we want you to grow to a place where you're employing folks, where you're paying income tax, when we see that return on investment. So for us, it's about being a catalyst, being a partner next to organizations like the Columbus Fashion Council. But then it's also about creating an ecosystem, right? Business in and of itself is risk, right? So there are going to be some that fail, there are going to be some that succeed. There are going to be some who are the next huge conglomerate, and there are some that just want to be a mom and pop store, and that is fine. So, but what we want to build is that wherever you are, wherever you want to be, that there's an ecosystem in our community that provides you at least that opportunity, right? So many times doors have been slammed shut or folks don't make it just because simply there's not a navigation or tools. It's not so much always about access to capital, even though we know that that is a big hurdle, particularly for Black and brown folks and folks that have been left out. So yes, access to capital is something that we have to continue to push for, but it's also making sure that we're investing in the ecosystem to give folks the tools necessary to be successful. What I have said and what my vision is around small business, I don't want to pat myself on the back by how many startups we have. I don't want to pat my back on how many folks open up a business. I want to pat my back when I say 2 and 3 years from now, your business doors are still open, you are still serving folks, and you're able to take care of your family. I want to pat ourselves on the back when we say that that person's side hustle can become their main hustle and they can take care of their family. That's what we should be focusing on. And so for me, it's about sustainability. How are we, again, investing in opportunities for businesses to be sustainable, and how are we also catalyzing ideas where other private sectors won't? Because when we catalyze those ideas and birth them, and they do show fruits, that is where the private sector money comes in. That is where we talk about this public-private partnership and how it works. And so I think that government's role is critical in this. We also have great partners, as you know, at the county level, and my good friend, President Erica Crawley, who also shares this and understands that this isn't just some hobby. This isn't simply just art. It is a part of our economy, and we have to treat it as such.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And for those that don't know, the City of Columbus, Councilman Nick Bankston has really spearheaded a lot of our public funding that Fashion Council and Common Thread has received the last couple of years. So we're super grateful for their support, as well as Common Thread. So not only have they put their support in standing on our stages the last couple of years, but they've also put their funds, which is the taxpayers' dollars, by supporting that. And that really is the ROI of our community. And so I would love to talk a little bit about our networking opportunities and how we are engaging our audience, which is not just the folks in this room, but our audience in terms of our businesses, the folks that we try to cater to within the Fashion Council, within our small business community, over at Common Thread, Ground Floor Growth, over at WACRA, and otherwise. And so Angie, since you work very closely with a lot of the businesses over at Common Thread Shops on 3rd, for now 3 years in a row and onward, and I know it is not for the faint of heart, because I am there with you. I'd love to channel this question toward you. So to the best of your ability, and whatever you're willing to share, how can mentorship and industry networking initiatives be structured to maximize impact for emerging fashion entrepreneurs?
I believe that mentorship is the key to the biggest success you could have. If it wasn't for mentors like the CFC and the other folks who know all about the fashion, then you're not going to make it. You need to tap into those folks who already have the knowledge, they have the education, they can just teach you whatever you need to know on how to start a business. You have to rely on them, and of course the mentors need to listen to what you need too. They can't just give you advice and you just take it. The mentors have to sit there and listen to you, because you also have ideas and you know what you want to do. And if they don't listen, then they can't be a key product in your life. So I truly believe that mentorship is just like the key thing for a small business and just for upcoming fashion designers.
And do you feel that we have what we need to mentor these up-and-coming businesses today?
I really think we do have what we need. It's just tapping into it, finding the right mentor, finding the right niche for the mentors to be able to, to educate, to take them to the resources like the private partnership. The mentor is the person who's supposed to be there to guide you in the right direction. And if they don't guide you, then you're not going to get anywhere. There's so many small businesses, and I've learned this through Common Thread, who's been so nervous about opening up a business because they just don't know. They just don't know who to go to, what to do, and where to go. And that's where EDCI comes in with the education, tell you this is how a business is supposed to be ran. This is how you go to people like the Nick Bankstons and the Kims, and you say, hey, what do I do? So, yeah, I truly believe in a mentorship.
Thank you for sharing that. A lot of times I think as you're building a brand, whether you're 5, 10, 15 years into it,
Exactly.
sometimes you just have to know what questions to ask. And you don't know what you don't know. So you got to know a little to know what question to ask next. And so, Kimberly, I'd love to have you build a bit more into this, because you still, although you're based here in Columbus, you still work on the national stage, and you're no stranger to the mic. She just said she just got off of a plane because she spoke at another national stage at the LEAD Summit in New York City. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you feel the retail industry is missing? And then, if I can, ask another question to that, because I think that's going to be somewhat of a loaded answer.
Okay.
What we can bring to Columbus to bolster what we already have going on, based off of what you're already doing nationwide?
Yeah. Well, you know, I'll start with the positive of what I see here in Columbus that I don't necessarily see across the United States. And what I see in Columbus is a very diverse ecosystem. And that is really unique, honestly. In most cities, it's very siloed, and you just don't see the inclusion of it, right? So that's an advantage here, because I think that is what retail is about. Retail is about work. Retail is also about the consumer, and the consumer is extremely diverse. And so that's the advantage. And we have diversity not just in that ecosystem, but we also have diversity in our officials and those who are the help, right? And I think that because we reflect, that it gives us an advantage. What I think Columbus needs, though, is to have more vision outward, to see what other people are doing, to understand what's happening in those big hubs, the New Yorks, the LAs, Atlanta. I feel sometimes here that we get a little insular in our thinking, because what we're doing, and we kind of talk to ourselves like, oh, we're number 3, we're number 4, so what? Like, well, don't you want to be number 1? Like, why aren't you reaching out and partnering or having people come in? Or I know I can personally say, as somebody who is in and out all the time, sometimes there are stages or rooms that I don't necessarily feel as welcome in, because I'm not always in Columbus, right? So I think there's an opportunity with that to kind of open up a little bit, to understand how to work outside of this space. But I think we have an advantage, and we have an opportunity.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Councilman, do you see Columbus? I know you do a lot of the policies that you've come up with, and you work across, not just within the city, you work across the county and with the state on so much of the policy and legislation that you've not only introduced but supported. Do you believe that Columbus is a leader in much of the legislation that you've introduced? And secondary to that, do you see other cities doing what we're doing, kind of copycatting a lot of the programs that we've come up with when it comes to retail?
Yeah, what I will tell you is that we are leading in so many spaces. I mean, my minority business program through Experience Columbus that provides free membership and additional exposure for minority businesses with Experience Columbus won a national award. I didn't even know they gave out awards for these types of things. Some trade show conference, we're winning awards for a bunch of different things. But I think to Kim's point, I want to piggyback on that. We do sometimes only talk to ourselves, and we don't celebrate, I think, how we are leading. When you say you're number 4 in the country or the world, I keep always getting that one wrong. Okay, in the country. Well, that makes us then number like 10 in the world. But when we say that number 4, you don't feel it. Yeah. Let's just be honest. You don't feel it. Yeah. You don't see it. I think maybe in the circles, I'm not a fashionista. As you can see how I'm dressed today. I usually dress a little better for Ludna. I'm sorry. I apologize.
That pocket square.
It was raining today, so I had to put on socks. I usually will have no socks.
You knew I was going to be here today.
I know.
I texted you yesterday.
But you don't feel it. And so we have to get, comfortable with, I think, bringing new ideas here, embracing those. But then also have to get comfortable with flaunting a little bit and telling our story and being okay with that. Like listen, I deal with deep stuff all day, every day. Like when we think about everything from social justice issues to economic issues to the turmoil that's happening in the wild, I think about that all the time. But it's also okay to say that we have challenges as a community that we have to absolutely face, but also there's things that we are doing that we can cheerlead and champion, right? And so I think that we are leading that space, particularly around the Ground Floor Growth Initiative. What we have done, or what I pride myself on, when we come up with these initiatives, we do a lot of research. So the Ground Floor Growth Initiative was really about what we saw bits and pieces happening in other cities, but not all three of them coming together as one. Right, so the Ground Floor Growth Initiative, for folks that don't know, is structured, there's 3 prongs to it. There's one upfront capital to help with the build out of these spaces. What we have found in downtown in particular, but really in any retail situation, is that the barrier for small businesses, particularly minority and women businesses, is that upfront cost for tenant improvements, right? That white space that you see when you walk down the street is empty, oh, I got this vision that could be here. That cost is so tremendous that it's a barrier for folks. The only way that you pay for that cost is either one, out of your pocket, meaning that you are fronting the money to do the construction, or you work with the developer or property owner to fold that into your lease, right? Which then makes your lease payment not achievable. So it is upfront dollars on the front end to help subsidize the tenant improvements that will happen. It is a escalated or such a graduated lease payment as well. So the city is paying 50% of the lease in year 1, 30% in year 2, and then 10% in year 3, with this idea of giving folks a 3-year runway to be able to establish themselves to get their footing, particularly because doing business in downtown is much more challenging than anywhere else in the city, and that is true for any downtown. And then the third piece, which I think is the most critical, is technical assistance, that wraparound services, that mentorship, that things that to help you set up your business properly to succeed. Because folks don't fail because they have bad products most times. No. They fail because they don't have systems in place, right? When it's summer months in Columbus, because y'all know we only get like 30 days of sun. I was 25 days of sun, yeah, at this point, right? When your business is booming in the summer, you got all that cash. What they don't teach you and what you didn't know is you should have an escrow account. Because in Columbus, it gets cold in the winter. You can't just close, right? So that escrow account, when you're in the good years, you put that money aside so that you can at least make your rent, right, for those slower times. So it's that kind of technical assistance that folks need over those 3 years, that help with marketing, and all of that is baked into it. So that 3-pronged approach, really, I mean, putting your arms around and supercharging it is what is necessary. Because again, if we wouldn't have done this, if government would have done this, those storefronts would just sit empty. We would continue to be building, and the ground floor experience in downtown Columbus wouldn't be something that is pleasant. And people, and why we're doing this is for 2 reasons. One, we want downtown to be a neighborhood, a true neighborhood where people live, work, live as a 24-hour place. But folks choose where they want to live, not simply based off of how cool the place is that they want to rent, or even if they can afford it. It's based off of amenities, it's based off of vibrancy, it's based off of safety. There's a whole lot of other factors that go into that. And so when you pull up, you know, in downtown, you're going to PNC, Jeff Edwards' new thing, Preston Center, this is dope, I got this great views. And then you go down to the street level, and you're just like, well, where I go get my groceries? Right. Where is my coffee shop? And there ain't nothing there. You're not about to live downtown just because you live downtown. No, you're going to go choose to live in Bridge Park, unfortunately. Now, maybe not because it's a far drive. I'm rambling at this point. But the point I'm trying to make is it goes back into that, what is government's role, right? This public-private partnership, and we invest and make that investment over the 3 years, and we have secured the funding for the 3 years of the program. I am confident that with that, what we will yield in that is more folks want to live in downtown, more folks not nervous or anxious about having to come to work back in downtown, because we're building an environment that has vibrancy. We're building an environment that makes you want to stay, that makes you want to connect, that makes you want to engage. And so that is the dividends of when we make these types of investments in the retail experience. And for me, it's all about fashion, right? Fashion is just not the clothes that we wear. It's not just the accessories. Fashion is woven into our culture and who we are, right? Look at the devices that we have. That is fashion, because you have to walk around with that. It's sexy. My earbuds, right, how they're designed, all of that is a part of fashion. And so when we talk about decouple this, sometimes we decouple traditional retail from fashion. No, it's all the same. right? It's all about an experience. And so for us, how do we continue to invest in that? And how do we do it intentionally? Now, the next thing that we have to do is how do we scale that and grow it? Because our downtown is large, but even more larger is our entire city.
Very well said.
So to that point, as I was listening to what you were saying, and I was thinking about WACRA, right? And the services that we provide and where we provide it. And so WACRA, the organization is WAC Retail Alliance, but we serve everyone. Right? We are the most inclusive organization, national and in Canada, that serves the retail industry with a big emphasis on fashion. And so we have mentoring services, we have executive coaches, we have training, we have networking, right? Happy hours, as well as networking where we teach you how to network, and we have training. So it could be a workshop, it could be how to grow your business, how to grow your your career. But we also have a service that's relatively new, but we are now entertaining designers and introducing them to our connection. So like Array's Fashion, Harlem's Fashion Row, and other organizations like that that are more national. And we recommended 2 designers from Columbus for Array's Fashion, and the feedback was what I said. You just need to elevate, look a little further at what you need. But those connections exist. And so as I was listening to you, I was thinking, that's where the partnership could be, right? We have this networking, I mean, it's just growing every day, and we cover from banking to, real estate to all like private equity, all of the things, as well as career. And I think that that's something, I mean, I'm just saying it now as I'm riffing, but I think that's a partnership that we could really build out to create something that elevates the talent here in Columbus to be more comfortable with being on a bigger stage and being able to, how did you put it, kind of tell their story, right, and be proud of it. So that we could grow beyond, because we do have something special.
That's wonderful.
And that's so critical when you talk about opening those doors and access. Another program that we've invested in is the Urban Business Connection through the Columbus Chamber of Commerce in partnership with the Columbus Urban League. And that's specifically for black businesses. It provides them membership to the chamber, but then also, again, some added benefits around exposure and some other things. But the key benefit there was just getting them in the door, right? So many of the structures, as we all know, are stacked against people of color, stacked against women, and they have been for years. And so much of it is race-based. And when you look fast forward to where we are now, because we've come a long way, now a lot of it is relationship-based. That's right. Right? And so what we have found is that if we can break down that one barrier, which is the cost of entry, get that business in the room to tell their own story, they succeed, they win. And so we see folks who have now 3 locations. We see folks that have multi-year contracts, not because there was some handout or some set aside, right? There was no 20% set aside. No. It's because they were in the room.
Right.
And got exposure and opportunity. So I would say there's so much power in networking. And I know it can get exhausting, especially as a fashion designer. You're probably working another job. You are the solopreneur. You're right. And like you go to these events sometimes, and maybe you think you see the same people, but you never know that one event that you do miss, or that one opportunity, maybe when you go into a room and you only talk to the people that you know, you're missing that opportunity to talk to someone who could be the next person that's going to invest in your dream. So networking opens up so many opportunities.
So much. And that what's also out there, you said solopreneur, don't also think that you have to do it all, right? If you are a designer, you don't necessarily have to be the CFO, but with those relationships, you can find people who can step in to be your back of house so that you can focus on because you are probably doing it while you're working a full-time job.
Right. I also think, first of all, this is such an amazing conversation. I can't even believe we've been talking for 40 minutes already. Can you believe it? I barely even gotten through my questions, okay? this is an amazing panel. When Tommy asked me to be a part of this, and to build my panel, by the way, I hand chose my people because I knew this was going to be an amazing conversation, and we could talk all day. But I want to open up the questions to the audience because we have such a powerhouse group of people up here, and I know we have some designers from all over Ohio, believe it or not, in the audience. I did meet, I'm not going to put her on the spot, but there is a couple of designers from Cleveland, there's one from Cincinnati. I'm not going to call them out, but if they have questions for you all,
We have a relocation program.
Oh, we
And
do,
we have
do
brick
we?
and mortars downtown.
Okay.
Now we
okay.
do. Now we do. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. So I want to open up the questions to the audience if we have any. We can, okay, so let's take the question to the back of the room. If you would give us your name and your question, please, and who you'd like the question for.
Sure. My name is Valerie Mayen. I'm a fashion designer based in Cleveland, Ohio. We've been in business for about 15 years. And I'm curious how Cleveland designers can benefit from the programs that you all offer. What's the first step that we can do to make sure that we're involved and engaged? How can we collaborate in ways that are meaningful and impactful? And how can we also take that information back to creatives, makers, designers in Cleveland as well?
It's a great question. Angie, would you like to pop in on Common Thread first?
Well, I think what you need to do is just come down and, like Nick said, just kind of get involved with the government and all the programs that we have. His program is really, really good. It's very impactful, and it's very resourceful. If you could just maybe contact your office or something, and maybe get with them and see what different programs that they have with the government. We have, like he said, we have private, public. We have public people that get together, and they do have all of these programs that you can get involved with. Our organization is one of them. We kind of assist with the ground floor growth program, which has made a big difference in downtown Columbus, and it could make a big difference in Cleveland too. So I say get a hold of Nick's office and kind of find out what programs are out there.
Okay, yeah, that's something that I think I've been curious and interested in, but sometimes with other programs in other cities, they either require us to have a presence in their city or they require us to have a storefront there, which isn't really feasible for us, but we'd still love to figure out ways we can, bridge gaps and contribute and collaborate.
You can always consider doing a pop-up also at Common Thread. We have the pop-up location if you don't want to do like a full-fledged, I don't know if there's pop-up locations with ground floor growth. If you're a member of the Columbus Fashion Council, that's a really great way to take advantage of any and all of the fashion resources in Columbus because it is a business resource organization. So the first thing to do as a fashion designer is really any designers all over the country, you are accepted into the Fashion Council here in Columbus. You don't have to live in Columbus to become a member. You can just become a design member through CFC, and right away you can get access to any of the business resources there. And right away the organization there can give you access to ground floor growth, and information about that, Common Thread, and any of the retail opportunities there, and just some education about them. Doesn't give you access right away like a turnkey, like here you go, you're accepted. Obviously, they each have their own prerequisites, but a really great way is to become a Fashion Council member as a designer, and congratulations, and thank you for coming to Columbus for this. This is awesome.
No, I'm really excited. I mean, we participated in FW Curve last year, and then that kind of just became a snowball effect. But and then we were really interested in WOCRA. I mean, we're a Latin-owned company, so that's something that for us I feel like we don't leverage enough, but we'd love to see how that can happen.
So WOCRA is across the United States and in Canada, and so you just need to invite us, and we'll come to Cleveland.
All right.
That's easy, but to the same actually on our website, which is walkretailalliance.org. You just sign up and someone will be in touch with you and you'll have access to all of the services that are available.
Great, awesome.
Yeah, and I'll just say really briefly about the particular programs that or initiatives that we're talking about at the city. Yes, they are specific to City of Columbus businesses, but I think there's maybe a conversation that we can have if you're looking at expansion or opportunity or maybe other tools in our toolbox that could be helpful to you. But I know particular all the things that we have been focused on is really about growing local owned businesses and really scaling them. But I think that you bring up a point that one of the things that we are looking into for ground floor growth, and I got this idea really from a trip to Bellefontaine, Ohio, believe it or not, right? This concept of brick and mortar, this really goes, I think, to collaboration and curation as well, right? How are we having spaces that maybe it's not an entire store that's dedicated to you, but there are different outlets or different wall space, or there's different ways that you could think about the floor space, if you will, that you can occupy. So we are thinking about that now as another iteration of what could come out of ground floor growth, to see that could be from anywhere, right? About how do you incubate space. And so it's a really cool concept, I think, as a way for folks to get out there, but then also for us to put multiple brands, right, under one place to provide all the back office space and to do that. And so that's one thing that I'm really interested in looking at us doing in the next phase of this.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think something that we're doing in Cleveland with the Greater Cleveland Partnership is like I think I mentioned to Joe earlier, we are collaborating and coordinating an event in October. It's called the FIT Symposium, Fashion Interiors and Textiles. And we really want to figure out ways that we can collaborate with Columbus Fashion Council, with Cincinnati's DAP program, with all the major hubs in Ohio that have portals of fashion and resources of sustainability and access that we can bring together to almost, really figure out a 5 to 10 year plan of how can we make Ohio this manufacturing, artisanal, creative hub. Because we have the resources, we have the people, we have the talent, but how can we really harness and leverage what we have together as opposed to siloed in our own little cities? Because I think there's ways to create bridges and inroads and make it a metro of sorts. And even like, I've even seen that show on Amazon called Etoile, where they take the dancers from Paris and the dancers from New York and they do a swap. Like, why aren't we doing that with our art schools? We have CIA in Cleveland, there's CCAD here in Columbus, there's the DAP program in Cincinnati.
There is a program under Fashion Council called Fashion Ed, which does connect and bridge all the fashion schools in Ohio. There hasn't been a lot of super activated programming with it in the last 12 months, I don't think, but there was some really heavy programming with it a couple of years ago, so that's a really good question for the board. Yeah. I used to serve as board president for the organization, so I know a little bit about it. Yeah. I'll always be an advocate. But that specific program does connect a lot of the schools, so I would inquire with CFC if you're not already a member to ask about that. But yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you so much. Yeah. Do we have any more questions? Yeah. Any other questions in the room? Yes? Oh. Thomas McClure, founder, executive director, founder of the National Fashion Alliance as well.
First of all, thank you so much to this powerhouse panel. Thank you for coming out. You are a powerhouse because of the impact you make on people's lives, right? On the small businesses we talk about, the designers, the hairstylists, the photographers, they're all part of this ecosystem that has been built in Columbus in the last 15 years or more. But my question is dealing with DEI. So DEI has become a national conversation, right? There's negative and there's positive. And I think a lot of the negative is because people don't understand or refuse to understand what DEI is. Since 2010, when Fashion Week was founded, we didn't even think about DEI because our runways consistently reflected the world that we live in. It was very diverse. And then when DEI became, a thing, we started creating reports. So our DEI report reflects that 60% of our runways are people of color. That's also reflected in the leadership on the board level and with our program leads and whatnot. So my question is this, with DEI as a national conversation, and you all have your finger on the pulse of the retail sector, right? Are you seeing an impact, either negative or positive, on the retail sector with common thread, with ground floor, even just national retail?
I personally don't see any effect for the DEI. With the people that come to us, or the designers, the small business owners that come to us, they are mostly women and minorities, which is great. Now, everybody, in my eyes, everybody has a little bit of creativity in it, and everybody wants to be that one. But these are the folks I'm seeing that's coming to Common Thread. We have, most of our tenants have been women-owned. Most of our tenants have been minorities. We have, and again, I go back to, I I think education is the key. I think if if you get the education, and like Nick said, if you have the financial backing and the wherewithal to do it, then you're going to do it regardless of what DEI says. I mean, a lot of people don't understand, like you said, what it means, but that shouldn't stop you from being who you are and stop your whole idea of being somebody and owning your own brick and mortar or doing your social media however you want to do it. I think people should continue to move forward, and DEI is going to be whatever it is it's going to be in this world. You just have to think about yourselves. You got to think about where you want to go with it. Common thread, like I said, is mostly minority-owned businesses and women. So.
Yeah, that's a good question for Walker.
If I speak on the national level, because we partner with these larger organizations, in January, February, there was a lot of buzz, around the term or the acronym of DEI. But you make a really good point. You said in 2010, when people weren't calling it DEI, you were doing it. And so what we talk to retailers about is, are you doing it? Because I don't really give a damn what you call it, because they named it. Once you, this was a real conversation in 2020. Once it was named, you knew it was going to be used in a way, right? Because once you name it, then you can disclaim it. Right. Whereas if you're inclusive and you're doing the right thing, then you obviously want to be in business, because any business that would not be reflected of its consumer, to me, doesn't want to be in business and wants to create opportunity for some of these other businesses to come in and move into their space and take their market share from them. So I haven't seen it, and I have no problem calling people out when I have. Actually, yesterday, that was one of the panels I was on, and I called people out, right? Because they needed to be called out. And afterwards, some of their representatives came to talk to me one-on-one about some of the gaps that they have, and now we have calls next week. So don't be afraid of it. And I also say to, everybody wants to sell to Macy's. I get this all the time. I have a brand, I have fashion, I want to sell to Macy's. Or I have a brand, I want to sell to Walmart. And, going back to what we said earlier, you don't always want to be in those large retailers, because those retailers, while it would look great, it'll feel good, oh, I'm in there, what it takes to do business with them could kill you. 100%. It could kill your business, and it's not always the path to go. But on the flip side of that, they all should do the right thing. And you see the result at Target. I was with some people who had gotten the letter. I don't know if anybody here has gotten the letter from Target, but I got the letter, and several people have gotten the letter that said, we haven't seen you in a while. Please come back. Here's, 30% discount. And everyone I talked to this week, they were like, yeah, you got the letter? I threw that in the trash, right? So I just think we have to be smart when we think about what DEI is.
I have, I've struggled with this, and I've said, this moment really is going to force us to be intentional. Mm-hmm. I have said on many cases, well before Trump, that diversity, equity, inclusion, one, meant nothing anyway if you weren't intentional. Sure. But if our values are true, if we actually do want to embrace diversity and know and recognize that, if we understand that equity is a real thing, that there are folks, regardless of the equality, are still not on a level playing field, if we believe that inclusion of all people, right? When we talk about DEI, I really feel sorry for the white women, y'all, because they were the best benefactors.
Right.
I'm not, now that's not Nick Banks' opinion, that's what the article
fact.
said. That's facts, right? But going back to what I'm saying, this is going to force us as a community that if we believe in these things, that it has to be how we do business. That was always the goal. When we talked about all of these diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, these set-asides, when we looked at all these numbers, we had to do all these studies to justify it and do it. But the ultimate end goal was to prove and show that these businesses that have been locked out of these opportunities, these people that have not had the opportunity to advance in these jobs and these positions, when they get them and they get the opportunity to, can do it and can do it even better in many cases. And so it has to be about how we just regularly do business. I shouldn't have to force you to have 20% minority participation on a construction project. You should just do it because it's good business. And I think that in the amount of time and how fast we have done it and we have done it right, folks understand that there is a business case here, that there is more money to be made when you expand the umbrella and expand the tent. So to your point, I don't care what you call it. Now everybody want to call it belonging and whatever that means, and climate and whatever. I don't care what you call it, but understand I'm going to be watching to see if you're intentional about the work, because that is where we have to go as a society. That it should be in our subconscious and it be something that is just natural, that when we look at the table, oh, wait a minute, we don't have someone represented from this company, this background, this background, and this background, not because it's a quota, but because that opinion matters. And I can tell you all this in retail, and as y'all know this, what matters more is that money, right? And so they're gonna see that their people is not represented there, they're gonna stop shopping there, they're gonna go somewhere else. So this is our opportunity, I think, to really push the needle and say, if we believe in these values, they have to show up, regardless if there's a chief diversity officer, they have to show up, regardless if there is an employee resource group, they have to show up in our workplaces and our cultures. It's on us to create that environment, and it doesn't take an initiative to make that happen.
That's a mic drop right there, right? Thank you all so much for sharing your insights, sharing your mind with us, sharing your background with us. This was one heck of a panel. Can we give it up for our panelists today? So to learn more about WACRA, we would love to learn more about Kimberly Miner at it's WOCRetailAlliance.com, .org, if you want to connect more and learn more, or follow Kimberly Miner on LinkedIn. And I think a lot of the bios are on the Columbus Fashion Council website, yes. And then we have Angie Black over at Downtown Columbus, but then Common Thread shops on third.com. And of course, visit Bruce Glen's pop-up store that's happening today and tomorrow, 10 to 6. And then, of course, Councilman Nick Bankston, who is doing amazing things across the community, but then today, of course, representing the Ground Floor Growth Program. Thank you all so much for your time today. Thank you for being my personal guests, and of course, guests of the Columbus Fashion Council. We're forever grateful for your time. Thank you so much.